Welcome everyone to another fantastic ACO artist discussion. Once again, the amazing Carlos Gonzalez-Fernandez is going to be hosting an event. He is a fantastic video artist, I want to call you. Yeah, we'll call you just a video artist. You're
Videographer.
multifaceted though, so it's hard to pigeonhole you into that. But his work is similar, kind of runs parallel to what the mission of the ACO is, which is kind of interviewing and talking to artists in the DC area and seeing what kind of makes them tick. And getting to know Carlos, he recommended Emon, so I am looked at her work and just thought it was absolutely phenomenal, and I really liked the kind of simplicity that leads to complexity. So I thought she would be a great fit for our program. But without further ado, I'm going to actually pass it to Carlos because he knows her a little bit more intimately in terms of the work because he's done a video on her. So I will pass it to him. Thanks, Carlos.
Right on. Thank you, Jordan. And thanks everyone for coming out to this discussion this morning. Jordan, can you hear me okay? I'm testing out my new mic. It's all right? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So as Jordan said, my name is Carlos Gonzalez-Fernandez, and I'm a freelance videographer based just outside of DC in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And as a freelance videographer, I am lucky enough to work with several nonprofits that are associated with subjects that I like, specifically, which are music and art. And several years ago, I was filming a project for Strathmore in Bethesda, and they wanted to create an online presentation for an upcoming exhibit of theirs. So I was spending tons of hours at the mansion all by myself, excuse me, all by myself, just capturing all the nitty-gritty details of each piece of work that was in this show. And it was a lot of work. It was the entire bottom floor and all the galleries on the upstairs as well. And I walked into one of the upstairs galleries towards the end of one of my days of shooting, and I was just immediately mesmerized by the entirety of the exhibit. It was a collection of primarily black and white pieces with bold brushstrokes that all seemed to have been painted by like a giant set of brushes. Being a big fan of minimalism, I was struck by the patterns and the movements of the lines, the textures. There were a few pieces. I think one is kind of like the three pieces that are behind Emon currently. There was a few pieces which were paired pairings, and they were reversed images both in position and colors, and I just loved it. It was like just making my mind explode. There was not one piece in that show that I would not have loved to have had in my own home. And I was also happy to know that I was going to be able to film the artist, who at this point I had no idea who the artist was, what they were about, any of that. I just saw the works and I was, just mesmerized. So Emon Surakitkoson was the artist's name, and talking with her both in that interview and then over the course of many hours of time that we spent producing my episode on her work, the time just talking with her and watching her work made me enjoy her work even that much more. Watching her work in different mediums and on different surfaces, both large and small, seeing her workflow scale up and down without cutting any corners in the process, really just won me over. And as with my previous introduction for this series, Jordan asked me to just stick with what I think is cool about her artwork, what draws me to her artwork. So I'm going to try to say that really quickly here. It's hard to describe for me. There's an immediate effect of Emon's work that I can't really articulate, but the work that she does just clicks with my brain. There's a strong use of contrast of the black and white inks, which for me are like sugar. Like, I just love that. The aforementioned large brushstrokes work to convey feelings in the painting. And as you step forward and inspect them, you can really watch the journey of each individual bristle that is within each one of these giant brushstrokes. And it's really just captivating. Each canvas is, I think, like seeing in a way, I find her works to be like abstract microscope slides. Each canvas is seeing a portion of this larger, complex alien worlds of these giant, shapes that are, you can't really explain them, but they're just beautiful and organic to look at. But as you like step closer and peer, you get to see all of the individual components that also create these worlds. So in conclusion, her works just captivated my imagination, and I found myself just letting the camera roll for minutes at a time sometimes, just because I was lost in just looking at this line work play. And with that, I'm going to hand over control of the rest of this talk to the extremely talented Emon Surakitkoson.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you so much for being here on Saturday morning on Labor Day weekend. I'm so thrilled and really honored to be here. And thank you, Carlos, for your introduction. It's made me sound pretty good. So I don't really have much to say about the process so much, but I can talk a little bit about like how I get here through my journey through art since I didn't go to art school or anything. I'm self-taught and then I'm in my the fourth year of my career now. So when I first I immigrated here to the US when I was 19 years old. And then, all my first decade of my life in the States, I was in service industry, which I thought that would be my dream. So I kind of, bartending and then working, serving, trying to save money to open a restaurant. And then the little that I know when I got, a little bit over 30 years old, I said, well, I don't really like an hour so much. And it's hard work, right? You have to go and then work late night, clean everything, go home, sleep, and then go to work again. So, well, this might be something more for people who like me, such an immigrant. I didn't really see another options as much. And then one of my close friends, he on Christmas he got me this like pen and paper from the art store, and that's kind of like something I don't really have access to. And then I kind of try to do the lettering online work, and the first time I used this fancy expensive pen from our store, and then the paper from there also, and I was like, whoa, like this is pretty cool stuff, like this is like such a fancy tool that I have, and kind of fall in love with the process. And then after that, I was like, well, I want to go into the bigger scale instead of just working on just pen and paper. So I went in the basement of the house that I was renting back then. I was living near Columbia Heights, and they have a bunch of house paint. And I don't really have money to buy canvas either. So I said, well, what can I do to like repurpose to use as a canvas? So I bought a stack of broken record, the little circle 12 inches one off eBay. So I bought about 50 of them and used my house paint and kind of like pour on it to make it like bubble, and the results come out look like a moon. So that was my first exhibition that my friends saw. And since my background is from service industry, I'd be like lucky enough to have people to be, hey, you want to have this like pop-up art show here at the bar and restaurant, and so that's kind of progress my career into alcohol ink. Alcohol ink is the next one that's the next medium that I try, and then I can create a bunch of it from something that's from a little ink that's so little, and then you can put it on paper. So you don't need to have a big studio to use this type of medium. After that, maybe have a couple months in, I create. So I will wake up early in the morning and then practice this alcohol ink, and then go to work at night, get home at 3 or 4 in the morning, come home again, and then set up the alarm in the morning because I couldn't wait to like make the art. Just kind of really fulfill me in that sense to be, oh, I could create something without having to learn or go to school about it. I'm just a little bit street smart from where I'm coming from. So after that, I have maybe a couple hundred of them, stacked really like high, and our supply for me back then still really expensive, and I was still working at the bar. So I asked the owner of the bar that I'm working at, hey, do you think I can organize the holiday market? In my brain, I was kind of like want to create myself an opportunity, and also helping other maker and artists to have an opportunity to like sell their work. And my boss then say yes. So I kind of, that's how I kind of start my career, because I thought that nobody know me as an artist, right? Like everybody just know me like from working in service, and that's really like how can I create the opportunity for myself to like start selling artwork. So that event I make about $300, a little bit over, and Carlos probably hear me say it so many times. I said, whoa, $300, like here I come, America, it's like I could just make so much work, and then it's kind of like grow on me in the process of like, if I work hard enough and then, like people love my work enough, I'd be able to make substantial income. And I didn't really leave that career right away because I didn't really, like growing up and having from a different culture, and my parents was really strict. We don't really roll the dice, kind of, we don't really like jump with both feet. So I kind of I get the studio after, and then kind of work at the bar less, and then, eventually I was kind of like the one of bartending schedule kind of get into the way of like doing art event and being community. So I left the bar, and I still really, like grateful and have a good relationship with them. And after that, a year after, I got picked up by Hyatt Hotel in California. And that's when the first time that I really see that I can be an artist full time. That's when I get into the commercial project. So that was the first one that builds my confidence. And then the second one was a year into my career. Gabby, who used to work at Strathmore, contacted me to ask if I want to have solo at Strathmore, where Carlos saw my work for the first time. And I was so green. I don't really have any experience, So I asked my roommate, I said, hey, you think this is a scam? My friends kind of like helped me look at the emails. Like, no, Em, like they want to give you like solo exhibition. So that was my first solo exhibition during COVID. So we didn't really have an opening or anything, but I still sold a couple pieces. That's the first time that I made, like a real income of selling work in the gallery. And then that's, like kind of, if you're emerging and you have your first solo, that's going to build your confidence for the first time. And then third thing will be, got invited to do the Powwow Mural Festival. Back then, now they changed the name to DC Wall. In 2020, I got to do this big giant mural that I never done before since I used the big tool. Kelly Tao, he's the one who's organized and running the whole thing. And I was really nervous to go into such a large scale and paint in public because it's not something that I usually do at all. And after I finished that project, it's kind of, like to see the product, see my artwork that I create, like come out nice, and like people in the neighborhood send me the message to be like, hey, this is so good. This is like great for the neighborhood. Your art is something different and we love it. So it's kind of, like build my confidence. And then after that, kind of, get picked up by a bunch of, not a bunch, like handful of commercial projects. So I kind of, like build my confidence. And on top of that, a lot of experience, good and bad, and kind of like learn how to float into the art world. And I told a lot of people, like it's everybody could be an artist, but being able to be sustain and make a great income, that's a real art, and it's take a lot of strength and hard work, right, to get here, because not every day you will wake up and like feel creative, and it's not every day you wake up and like be cheerful, and then kind of have a lot of people like contacting to connect to ask about my story and how I get into the commercial project. So then I decide to, create little DC artist meetup. And it's something that I do for the community and, kind of guide them if people even have any questions or want to come do meetup. And time to time we do holiday market or like art project for emerging artists in DC area, and kind of like help each other. It was a bit without people who like supporting me along the way. I would say it's a little bit hard, to know which way you're going. Even though you go to school, you don't really know like any particular way to go about your art, because you could make so many income, but if you don't have any goal, you must kind of just have to wander around to figure it out. So, I always tell everybody to have like short-term goal and then long-term goal. So short-term goal for me is just be able to wake up and then create work and then make money and pay bills, right? Long-term goal for me, that's, I kind of come up with it this year because I just moved to Baltimore a couple months ago, and be able to, like cut the cost of having, I have 2 studio now. I have small studio in DC, which I used to pay so much. I used to have a bigger studio and I pay so much money for rent, and renting in DC is also expensive. And I thought about like, how would I be able, and sometimes some months the income will be so good and some month the income won't be so good. So I talked to myself, I said, okay, if one day I won't be able to make the income and be able to afford DC to live here, I have a great studio here, like, will I stop being an artist? The answer is no, and life is so long. So I said, well, if it's not going to be here, then maybe I move into a different city and pay a little bit cheaper on rent. And it's kind of, this year, that's like financial burden kind of lifted off my shoulder and be able to have a day off, and like create something that's more fun and not focusing on making money all the time. That's something that I learned this year. And I'm hoping for the next 5 years, I can get into public art or do like sculpture, because a lot of my project right now, it just go to private client or like a high-end commercial project. So it's not really accessible for everyone. And then I thought it would be powerful for me to be able to create something outside where everybody can see it, and then I will have more time to do, mostly community work. Yeah. Then I want to talk a little bit about why I create the way I create. So I talk about a little bit about how I started, and I didn't really have a lot of money back then, and it's kind of have to pick and choose your medium to see what is affordable for you to keep it going. For me, it's just not that, I'm doing abstract, so sometimes it's not like I can wake up and paint flowers. It's not like I can wake up and paint portraits like anybody else. More power to them, and I hope one day I'll be able to do that too. But since I can only work from here to here, so I just kind of pick and choose what kind of medium I use. And back then it was cheaper to just buy 2 color of paint, which is black and white. And I'm not really good at color at all, right? I have to admit that. And it's more like it's a thing for everyone. And then it's kind of grow on me in the sense, okay, if you can only have this like 2 options as an immigrant, right? Like have a really, really like limited thing that you can work off. How can you make it more interesting and make it more sustainable for me? Because, buying a big brush and big tool, it could be, a couple $100 and canvas. So I learned how to make my own brushes, and then I keep it more interesting for me. Like if I switch it, I only want to stick with black and white just for now. In the future, maybe I want to do color. I want to be an artist until I turn, I feel I can't walk. So like my career is quite long, but I'm going to stick with black and white for now. And then I was like, well, I don't want to paint the same painting all the time. How can I use the tool that I have and the medium that I have to like change it, make it more interesting, right? Like if I'm bored painting something all the time, like my audience probably bored. So I kind of, like change my medium here and there. It was really like give me, like fulfill me when I can create something so large and so strong and so like contrast, but yet when people just look at it, it's just a piece of art and have a little bit moment with it. And that's just my goal. It's like a lot of people, when they see my art and they have a glimpse of like the beauty or like the relationship with it for a couple minutes, and that's all I need. It doesn't have to say much, like just for me to be able to like work, and I create work really fast and like have an audience, like pick it up and follow through my journey. That's kind of important more than creating something that's super refined and expensive, for me. And sometimes I try to get into the sculpture work, and it's really cool for me to use power tool, jigsaw or like big blades, and like 5'2". So to use the big power tool and then create like a sculpture with my two hands is really fulfill me for some reason. So that's what I'm on now. And sometimes I use, all type of material like crackle. I use different type of acrylic crackle to make it more interesting when you look closer. As the photo that you see, the one that's like standing up right before where I'm walking, that piece, if you look closer, it have if you look farther, you can see the composition that's connecting, and you kind of follow the line. But if you go closer, you can see a little bit more texture. And I'm gonna show you guys some of my work. So these top two pieces is one of my favorite yet, and you can see that I can, in the bottom of it, I use the coral texture. In the middle, I comb that with clay brush, to put the layer on, comb the brush out, and that usually the middle line usually go first. And then on the top, I use a different crackle. And this is pretty much, like my work really like focus on composition. And then as you move closer, you can see all the texture and the crackle to make it a little bit more interesting. But I don't want, I never want my art to be anything that's like disturbing anything surrounding it, just like representing myself in the community, like everybody have their own beauty, and I'm not, I'm here just to show off myself, and I'm not disturbing anybody else. And I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom so you guys can see the early stage of my work. I don't really, change or jump much with the texture work, because it's really hard to maneuver into something that you want to do, since the crackle will crack as the way it is when it's dry. But all these is my early work. This piece is called Sticky Rice in the middle. It's the first piece that I do, use my pouring technique, and then use the crackle with it, and then use my brush technique. And I call it sticky rice because it's kind of give me that like gooey, sticky feeling, but like still, everybody love rice. So here I go, the sticky rice name. And then let me see if I have more of the. So that is my texture work. This work is I just call it painting because I'm creating my own brushes. The top one on the left, this one is the first piece that I'm creating out of my homemade brush. I was in North Carolina and stuck in, that little island with the thunderstorm, and we couldn't leave it for a couple of days. And so I told my partner, I said, honey, I haven't paid for 4-5 days now. I'm going crazy. And he said, well, there's a dollar store. We can go and see what can you find, So I went to the dollar store, grabbed a bunch of brush, and this paper, it was a $2 paper. And I kind of stacked my brush on the ruler and then trim it down. So it's have a little bit more like strict up the fine lines. So it's not sprayed so much. And then I separate them, and then I get with it. And I said, well, it's on paper, it's kind of flat, but it looks interesting and organic shape that I made. So I cut it out. And that's how I get into a sculpture idea. And you can see, like when I, and then after that, when I create something or move into the new series, I create something really flowy, and then as soon as I get better, I want to refine it. So you can see there's more, there's something that's sharp and strict line. They're a little bit more structured. Yeah, a lot. I'm just kind of always want this person, like a little bit street smart to be like, oh, what can I make it myself? What I can do myself? What I can build myself to be able to, not as much as like seeking for approval, but a lot of people always have the assumption of like, oh, we need all this thing to create art. We need all this tool, we need all this books or education, which is true, right? For people who have money and time to go to school, they know more of the process. But also, if you are not in the stage of like be able to afford to go to school, be able to afford to buy something expensive to start with, like you can be like me, buy like a house object and kind of make it your own. So this is all the early work. All this work show at Strathmore on my 2019 where Carlos saw all the work, and it's really, they're a little bit more simple and not too complex as what it is now, but it's something that I'm really, like make me share it, make me like know as like minimal, like simple abstract maker. And a lot of people, like always like wonder where I get all this like style and like how I have such a, like strong sense of my work. I always tell them, you kind of have to love what you do first, and then you wake up and do it every day and then practice on it and you get good at it, and that's what is, like become you. And yeah. So we have about 25 minutes. I can take questions to Carlos or John or Jordan if you guys have any questions.
Good, Mariana.
Sorry, this is Mariana. Hi, Emon. This was amazing and very inspirational because it's like you're an artist being born. It was like watching that. Do you have any of the tools or any of the things that you used early on or even now to show us by any chance?
Took a bunch of the video that we did at Brooklyn Border, which is the climbing gym near my studio, and one of them will have this 6 inches brushes, and I was like, well, this brush I can't really cut it down because it's like $40-$50. So I kind of like wrap it with the rubber band to separate them, right? So you have like this 6 inches brush, cap it with the rubber band, so you have a little gap, and then when you move your brush like 90 degrees, I work with really since I want to leave a lot of mark on ink work, I use really tiny bit of paint. I would dip my brush in and like I will loop my paint a little bit watery and dip my brush in and slam it. And then kind of like create the grip. Then
Fabulous. And are you using inks mostly now, or are you using a combination of ink and pigment?
I use a fluid acrylic, right? So that's a little bit watered down. And if you use like such a thick acrylic, when you run the brush through, it won't leave the marks for the brush so much. Yeah.
How do you come up with the patterns?
Mostly I just like based on water, mountain, and horizon. So you can see like the middle line, I would think it's about to be like something like a showstopper, right? Like capture. So you see that horizon line first. And after that, when it's dry, like a lot of texture work is take time to dry. And then when that's dry, I would, like how would I go? Like how would I dress you up as a person, right? Like you have one thing to work with, and you can do like the bottom, and usually keep it like both top and bottom white and the black line in the middle. And after that, if it's enough, then I can stop and then varnish them. But if it needs something, then that's when I add top black or top white and a little bit of the sparkle, but I don't really. It's interesting enough to see the process of it, and mostly the composition is like the most important thing for me. So I don't really want to overdo it. It's not really like forgiving medium. So as soon as it's cracked, as soon as like black goes on top of the white, and that's kind of you have to decide to work with what you have then. Yeah. Trying to see this brush.
I have a question. You're making all your tools, which I think is absolutely the coolest thing in the world, by the way. I was thinking, do you think your artwork would improve if you had, if you had all the tools that you could possibly want? If you had millions of dollars to buy every brush that you possibly want, do you think your art would actually improve, or do you think that the handmade, the process of creating your tool to adapt to your style is actually beneficial to what you do as an artist?
I mean, I'm not like everybody need one different thing and have different practice, right? Like for me, like if I have the money now to like, if I have 50K to invest into something, I would love to go learn how to do sculpture. Now I'm building this year and next couple of years, I have this like 5-3 year gap, and that could change because life happens all the time. But for now, I kind of want to make a bunch of wall sculpture that I can do it, and I can like hand cut it myself, and then hopefully in a couple of years I can find the fabricator who will want to work with me and see that I'm been doing all this kind of work, not like, oh hey, I'm coming from painting, I want to do model sculpture so I can do public art, so that's how I study. And I like to read a bunch of art books, or there's like a lot of free information that you can get from the internet. So I'm get really smart with that. I will look at people who do it like a similar type of work or something, and then I will like look on their website, look on Instagram, and learn their technique. Right, the key is not copying other people's work. Right, the key is just learn free this information and then translate it to my own work. And I think about like painting, it's just like being a chef, right? Like there's food for everybody. And if you serve spicy food, then your client will be people who like spicy food, and the last thing I want to be is cafeteria that's like doing knick-knack and everything and don't have people just like wander around. I want people to come and buy my work just because the stuff I do is good enough for them to spend this type of money on, Yeah, but I love like learning all the tools, but as soon as you change medium, sometimes it can get a little bit expensive to start with. I did clay before, so that was a little bit of headache, and here I find my sculpture. So this is the sculpture that I made. And it's hand cut, so you can see, like this is another one that I made. This one called "Life is a Tiger." So they like hand cut, and then okay, that's the open. So in the future, I want to like translate this into the metal work, and like it would be super cool to see maybe like 3x5, but it's standing somewhere, and we're like, oh, look at that work. And then when they found out like who make it, it's just this, like short female that could create something powerful. So I kind of want people who especially like me, to think that's like, oh, it's really limited of what we can do. Like I'm here to be like, no, you actually can do more. You just have to go ahead and practice on it.
I have another question. I'll let you after Carlos.
All right. It's not really a question so much as just a comment. Watching you work on so many different size canvases, and over the time that we were recording, I think I mentioned it in my my introduction, but like I was astounded by your attention to detail.
Yeah.
And like on some of your canvases, they're very big, and you would have these big brush strokes on there, but then you would spend a lot of time with the thinnest
Yeah.
like paintbrush I could see, going in there and filling and adding details and textures. And then what was more amazing, like that was like on an 8x4 canvas or whatnot. But then at the Brooklyn Boulders, when
Yeah.
your canvases were those concrete poles that went up about 40 feet, and you were doing 4 of them, I believe, on all sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you were up on the lift at the very top where nobody is going to be up there inspecting it, you were still like going with a little paintbrush on these parts of the painting, and like no one's ever gonna see that detail up there, but you were still
I
spending.
know.
Yeah, you are.
Right? I know. And like I'm really like holding up my work to a certain standard. You know, like I want it to be like good, right? For people to like, if they don't even know who's the artist is, but if they look at the work and they like it enough and see, you know, as you see, right? At least you who see and know, so that's enough for me, you know. Like the last thing I want to do is creating the work that's not good enough, right? Kind of. So like it's here, you know, more than like other people. Like I'm doing art because I love the process so much, you know. Like if the dream would be just paint all day, I don't have to deal with internet or selling work, but that's not realistic. And then when there's all like headache coming from, you know. So but like artists really fulfill me. And before I was this person, you know, I was like so insecure and like always thinking that, oh my God, like people gonna hear my accents, like people gonna look at me that I'm less, which is something that I can overcome it with art. And then now, you know, it's really fulfill me when people see my art first, and then they ask who the artist, and they see me, and they're like, "Oh, you paint this." It's kind of surprising for the tool and the scale that I work or use, you know. So it's pretty cool job to have. It just, you know, I think try not to get lost on it in the social media now in this day. It's quite hard. So, you know, I always remind myself to be like, all you got to do, you just have to love what you do and love the process, and everything else is extra, you know. So
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mariana.
I sensed in you early on when you talked about the Carolina trip and going not crazy, not being able to paint.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that need? Maybe where it comes from you, or what happens when you cannot make art, either because you have to go on a trip, or you know, you have other obligations perhaps that life calls for. What is that need about in you?
So I grew up really, you know, from really different culture. And my dad said, you also always have to work, you know, you have purpose. You need to work, you need to do something. So like having, you know, to become an artist full time, sometimes people don't look at your type of work as work because they don't not quite understand, you know. It's such a privilege to be an artist, you know, like I know that. But to valid and like having some sort of security in here, it's like I have to work. So when I was living in DC, my first 3 years of my career, I would just work, and refine, and sell. And because I thought that's like when I sell a lot or like showing my artwork a lot is a success, right? Because I didn't really know like what was art mean, you know. I know I just love the process of making them, and then kind of go to work every day with no day off. And sometimes it could be a little bit like crazy and isolated, you know. You just go into the studio and like you start painting, and making, you know, sundown, and you're like, oh, this is it. And you're creating something that people don't need. It's not essential, right? Like people just want to see the beauty, and that's why they want to see art. So having that balance of like, okay, this is my job. This is something I'm taking serious. How would I take a break, like have a day off like anybody else, you know? So I go camping once a month, you know, to be able to like, this is gonna make me sound really uncool, but be able to sleep on the sand and, you know, like eat something off the grill, and it just kind of bring me back to like, okay, like this is people who doesn't have money, this is how they live, and if you can be happy here, then it's okay too. But sometimes if that time outside the studio was too long, I just feel not productive and feel like I don't have a job, right? And then when I don't have a job, it's kind of get a little bit crazy, and that's when I have to like get back to the studio, yeah. But
And
it's
that
kind of like find a balance, yeah.
what was it before you? I mean, you haven't been doing this for that long. Like, what was it like to have what that drive, that desire to create? What did you put in that place when before you were an artist? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, like, I don't know if like Asian parents, right? They have a say for things like that, because like like I grew up and my parents would say, well, all you have to do is just to go to college, and then like we don't have racism there in Thailand. We have class, and I was kind of like grow up in like middle class. So my dad would go to college, get married with people who were same class or upper, and then be a mother. So like when I first moved to the U.S., I bought my first car when I was 20, and my first job was at Wendy's, the fast food, and then I brought my really first car with that money. So I was like, whoa, like this has changed the whole perspective of my whole life that I know, right? It's like, okay, now I can work and have whatever I want. And then, sometimes it could be wicked to be immigrant working in a restaurant, and like when people don't really see me beside that, it was kind of hard to like figure out who you want it to be. And then lucky enough, right, to like find art and be able to like fulfill the income, fulfill my sense of value, and that's what is keep me going, because I don't see myself doing anything else, and I'm not quite confident when I first start, but like as I have all this project, I have all the commercial hotel, I have Kimpton, I have Marriott, I work with FedExville, I work with American Express. So like those kind of add on the confidence more. It's not like I'm confident bidding with anybody else. It's not, but like it's a chance of me like for them even interest in my work to get into that level that was kind of like enough to keep me going, and mostly just want people to know that you don't you need to have your own goal, right? Which my own goal is so little, like I like eating seafood, and I like making work all the time, and like I have a great partner, I have my dog, and that's all I need, right? To be able to live and be happy every day, right? Like I walk back home from the studio and I'm like, oh, that was a good day, and everything else, besides I have to meet the income, everything else such extra for me. And that's how I, be able to keep myself sane. But it's not, I won't say it's easy, but it's really doable, if you like for younger people who want to be an artist, if you love it hard enough and you just love making art, that's just more than enough for you to be an artist, right? And everything else is kind of extra. But you don't have to feel like, oh, one day you want to be an artist, right? You can just practice on it like a hobby, and then if it's for you, then you kind of keep going and try to find your target and your client,
Well, what is practice for you? I mean, like I try and think from a more representational artist, like, we do observational painting or observational drawing. Is doodling your practice, do you think, or how do you hone your skills, I should say?
So like when Carlos say that I go back to do the detail with like something that's so little, like a lot of people, if they know the internet Emon, they would think I'm just do boop, 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 and then my painting is done. It's actually not. It's a lot of like calculation, like this piece, right? It's a lot of calculation and some of the math and some of the thought to put the composition there. So when you run the brush, it's just kind of like want to capture that moment, but have it precise. So you don't have to like erase it and like do it again. And then after that, I'm done. Like this one, I would do like the inner line outwork first, like 3 of them, and I kind of put the composition in, which is like black and then sometimes white in after. And that's how I guess I practice, like I'm not good with computer. So when I sketch, I just do it on my phone because again, like street smart. I would get an app and I would like kind of press and like put the sticker on and erase it because that's the only way I know how to do it, So I guess when you find something that you like and it's become like, oh, okay, like I can make this so fast and so quick, I want to spend more time in studio with it. That's when I go back and refine each piece and then clean it up and like put more crackle, or like all my artwork I paint on the edge, I put the D-ring into myself, I varnish each painting on my own. So that's a process that people don't see off the internet, but at the end, like when people like, if they love the art enough to spend money and think it's enough to like hang out at their home, I want them to not have to question when they see that again, right? It was okay, we make the right decision. So that's how I, like practice and like get going with it. Yeah.
And Emon, what app do you like to use to compose on your phone or whatever? And also, I would like to know about what is your preferred support to work on. Is it wood? Is it canvas, or both? And particularly the 3-dimensional things, is it wood that you're cutting? Thank you.
Yeah. So the app that I use on my phone is called PicArt, PICSART. So you can reverse the composition. You can, like use 2 photos and like press them on together and erase it, such as doing a mock-up or the scale kind of work. But beside that, I don't really use anything else. If it's become, like if it's a bigger client that I have to bid on, then I will have my computer friend help me do that. If they don't, last thing they want to do is this little doodle from 5 years old. And for the canvas, usually like if it's something smaller than 3 by 5, I usually get it pre-made because, like stretching canvas sometimes take a bit longer. When I get to studio, I just want to get going. And sometimes by the time I finish like stretching canvas, oh my God, like my back hurt. And now I don't want to like stand 3 more hours to paint it, right? So I will buy that. And it's cheaper if you get it from Blix, more than 4 or 5. And then the discount was really low. And, they've done it from people who know what they're doing. But if it's something larger, it's really dependent on the project. If I have canvas that's, like something this large or something like that you saw us in the photos, then I stretch it myself. I would just get the bar and then wrap it up with cramped canvas, white canvas, and then I prime it again a couple times. And for my wood, I use the MDF, there we go. Because I practiced with wood before, and then when you use the jigsaw and cut them, sometimes it have the spinner or like the edge. If you don't cut it like clean enough, it could chip a little bit. But MDF doesn't have that effect. When you cut it, it's just like clean, and then you when you marry them, when you put 2 and 2 together, it's cleaner than a piece of wood. Yeah.
Does anyone have any further questions before we let Emon go for the weekend? No? Going once, going twice? Well, I want to say...
I have one. I'm sorry, Jordan. Where can we visit your studio?
Oh, good question.
So I have a studio now, and that's in the same building that I have a first studio at 52 O Street. That they're doing open studio, once a season. So if you look on their website, 52 O Street, and you can see the schedule there. Also, if you ever make it down far enough to Baltimore, you can contact me. I would love to show you guys the studio here. I have a studio here that has a little bit more space. It's 52 O Street. They're a little bit nicer, right? To have like people go in and out. The studio in Baltimore, is more like industrial. So I have my wood shop. I cut all my wood and sculpture here. All my large scale painting, they storage here. Yeah.
Thank
And,
you.
yeah, and I have the show coming up for Hip-Hop Co. If you guys have time, the opening is on October 19th. That's at Hip-Hop Co near Union Market. And then I have another cooperation project for Ahoy Project AOLLY for, they used to call the Resident Art Center. Now they changed it to their contemporary art. So I'm doing the cooperation with Katie Pumphrey. This is the first time that I'm working hand on hand painting with someone in color. And it was really like challenging to see like different, artists like have a different process, have a different ethic of work. And, at the end of the day, when the project wrap up and we look at it and we both happy, and that's kind of like, ensure me to be like, okay, if one day I want to translate into color, I'd be able to, do that too. And Katie work is so flow. So, my work is really like structured and intense. And she brings a lot of like flow into that project. And that's event they're doing print to sell and like donate back to the organization. And they're also doing live auction on September 30. And if you look on my website, you can grab the ticket from there too. So it's kind of interesting to see the works going on live auction, and hopefully we'll be able to like support them as much as they support me on this project. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was so wonderful to get to know you and see your work and hear about your process. I hope everyone joins us in 2 weeks. We have Teresa. I think it's Osaka. Oaxaca, thank you. I knew you would know how to pronounce it correctly. She's a figurative painter, works, I think, very in more like kind of a classical standpoint, but with a lot of different motifs, and her work is really fascinating. So I hope people can join us. Teresa, say it again.
Oaxaca, even though it's written Oaxaca.
I know, I want to say Osaka, and I know that's
right.
wrong. Oaxaca. I knew that. Oh, man, I got to study better. Anyway, it'll be a really nice treat to hear about her work too. And come see the Labor Day Art Show at Glencoe Park. I'll be here for 3 days straight. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of comments on loving your work on the chat. I didn't get to say.
Yeah, if you guys ever like come down to Baltimore and want to do studio visit, I'm here and I live next to the building, so it's really accessible for me to like just walk there and show people stuff. And I love connecting with other artists, to be able to like hear the way other people think, and it's kind of like we similar than we thought that we are, but we have a different process to go with it. It's made me feel really good, it's valid, right? Oh, we're doing a real job, All right, thank you so much. Yeah,
that's okay. We'll keep inviting you to attend if you're interested, or see the archive videos. And the videos should be up by Monday or Tuesday. Yeah,
I saw last two, and I'm also friends with Sarah Jameson, so I DM'd her. Was like, well, like I just saw your episode, and I don't really have anything smart like that. But Sarah's so wonderful. She's so great. Yeah, but thank you so much for the opportunity to like share my story. This is kind of make my day. Thank you.
It's truly inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great weekend.